Hello, everybody. This is LA with TA Today, looking at the indexes and a few of the stocks mentors are interested in, the mentors of the TA Today site. Let's pop into some of these stocks and see what they look like, starting with the indexes. If we look at the S&P 500, use it as our gauge, our primary gauge of what's going on in the market. We thought we'd see a test of that top today. It did, and that was the breakdown bars high. And so what we're looking at is we're looking at this area over here. We tested here last week, tested again today. If you look at the volume swell, or in this case, diminishing volume on that test, black candle, that's not a good sign. That says once more you're going to try and pull this thing back and test again. Now, as of yesterday, we expected the test because we had the test here on the backside, right? Came down into this bar, no volume, flips around, tries to get up again, a little hammer reversal there. Does the test though, fails, that says back down the other side, right? Back down this way. And so we'll see tomorrow, if they bring it down this deep or bring it back into this this bar here, the top 29.79. And if they can hold it, because the market is always about a test, right? It's a test to try to get higher or a test to try and get lower, one or the other. And you test both sides until one of them fails. In other words, the supply line that's up here gets eaten up, or the demand line down here gets eaten up, one of the two. When that happens, then you get the breakthrough. Up until then, it's just a test. If we think about this in terms of structures that are in place, in this case, we have an ABCD structure. In this case, the structure is from here up, back down, and then back up again. And so that takes us up to new highs if we get up there. There's a nested one in place underneath it, right? That's a potential one. This one hasn't fired. That one's trying to get over this price point. That would get it up to almost the same area. So you got nested ABCD structures, one actualized, one not. So far, they've been able to hold the actualized one up above the B point. If they fell below it, then that would change the context of what's happening. What's happening right now? Supply, in this case, demand outstripping supply. This thing's going to try and keep breaking out until we see it forced back lower. Moving over the weekly, up against the same thing, and moving over to the monthly, same sort of idea, right? Up at the top, trying to break out. If we look at the cube, we don't have anything bad here. You've got a sideways position that's going to try and move back into either bullish or bearish, right? So it was bullish before, now it's sideways. Got to go one way or the other. You're not extended here, you're not extended here. All of these look good, right? At least on the VTI. If you go to the world, doesn't look as good. And so a world index is certainly weaker. That's what you see here on a bearish on the monthly, on the weekly. Whereas on the U.S. markets, VTI being the more inclusive of the U.S. markets, the broadest measure, looking still fine. If you go to any of the indexes, IXIC, same sort of situation, just a little bit lower. Same thing with the NDX. Go to the Russell. The Russell is the one that had the big gains. Russell also tries to get higher today, fails again. And so it all looks like another attempt to pull this thing back starting tomorrow. Going to some of the picks and some of the questions having to do with the mentors. We've got a swing point high. This is the SOXX. Had a test failure here. That left to the pullback or led to the pullback. Did the same sort of thing here, tried to push higher. Today, a little bit more volume on it, pushes back up. I don't really see anything negative here other than the fact that it hasn't been able to get back up and test again. You go to the weekly, you had a breakout. That breakout got over this swing point high back here. The one that's here, not over it yet. That's the one it's still trying to test. Test failure getting over it last week, even though you had a breakout on the prior swing point high. So to summarize again, the breakout was here over that swing point high. You had a test failure of this swing point high. That says you can pull back. that test would be to the bottom if it pulls back fully, right? That would be back to this bottom area here. And so this to me is just a kind of a question mark. Certainly the trends trying to move higher. You got ABCD structures to the upside on the weekly here, right? There's one here, and then if you did that forward, it would take it way up to new highs. But it's got to actualize, hasn't done it yet. So that's the SOXX. If we go to the Microsoft, this is another one. Now the Microsoft move today tested the top, tested it with volume, failed on price but not volume. That says it will probably try and test again. If you pull that back, the other test was against this breakdown bars high. It actually stayed over it, had a little less volume. So that says it's got some more work to do. In other words, there's some more supply up here that has to be eaten up. But Microsoft looking pretty strong on the daily, also on the weekly. So far it's a test on the weekly that's failed, but there will be more volume there as well. Going to some of the beat up ones, here's a FDX. FDX now tests the low, or almost tested the low, the swing point low right here. Doesn't get under it, but volume comes down, big heavy gap down on earnings, blows through a number of, shall we say, support areas on the way down. That down hugely on the year, down hugely on the week, down testing on the weekly, testing two swing point lows, trying to break them down. This one's going deeper, right? This is not done. So this is not a bottom fishing exercise. If anything, it's a short on any kind of strength to short into. So that's FDX, FedEx. Boeing's kind of the opposite case. Now, Boeing had gotten beaten up. Let's go to the weekly first. Boeing, of course, had all the problems with the airplane crashes, huge volume on that spike down. That was this bar. That left a boundary here. Couldn't ever get over it. Did test underneath it, tested back into it, got back underneath it. And down here, you actually got a test of the low, right? And it actually got slightly under it, if I could draw that in exactly right. There it is, closed just underneath it, but reversed after that up to the new highs. This is trying to test on this swing point high, another swing point high. It's trying to get back up to here, at which case I suspect it's going to fail and come back. And so this is a short once it plays out. It could be a short here. We don't know that yet. Matter of fact, I wouldn't test it here yet. It looks like it is going to try and make it all the way up to here, and that would be a short, especially if it does it immediately. So in other words, you come off the lows here, you get not much of a hesitation. You come all the way back up here and test that. That would be the spot that you'd want to put on the short. Give it just a little bit of room and short it and say, you know what, I don't think you can get any higher. And that would be the trade on the weekly time frame. Let's go to another one. This one, a potential long setup. It's Air Lease Corporation. Now, Air Lease Corporation, if you go back and look at your swing points, you had a breakout here with this green arrow. That says you had more volume on this than you did on the swing point you broke. That leads to a push up. Now it comes back and it's tested. It tests within 6 bars. That says it can get about 2/3 of the way deep. In other words, it could come into the 42 area. You also have some tests that took place down here, right, that were unable to break this down farther, which eventually led to the retrace and the push back up. Now, let's look at the weekly time frame. On the weekly, if you pull it back and look at it, you've got the breakdown bar, and everybody's dealing with breakdown bars. You got the breakdown bar that's back over here. If we take the volume on that bar itself, that volume's not that much, right? And so the volume coming into it is actually heavier, which is good. So you hit it with volume, you eat up a little bit of the supply that's there. This is going to take a while to break through. It's not going to just like take off and just break through, most likely, unless you have some great earnings or something, right? There is an ABCD structure in place. That ABCD structure is almost done. And so I don't see a lot here to bank on anytime soon. If anything, it looks to me like this is probably going to set up The same sort of thing you've seen along the way. In other words, you come down, you come up, you hesitate, you retrace. You go back up, you come down, hesitate, you retrace. Hesitate, retrace. Now I would expect another hesitation, some sort of retrace. That's the way that one looks to me. Going to the last one, UFPI. And so this is the last one the mentors are asking about. Here we got a swing point high. This is Universal Products, Forest Products, lumber, I believe. And if we look here, nice big push up with some volume, makes a high. Retraces, all of this is good. This gets retraced and tested. So that's a swing point high getting tested. That's what we call retest regen. Comes back up, test again into that high. If you look at the volume there, volume here, that's a test failure, right? Price and volume test and fail. What should that do? Should lead to retrace. This is the swing point high was broken on this bar. That's a full retest regen. It's fully retesting it, and you would expect the odds favor it to try and regenerate higher. Now, whether it can break through whatever the supply is here, we don't know yet, but this actually is not a bad setup to try and buy. So on a daily time frame, this has set up. Now let's look at the weekly time frame. If we come to weekly, right, just like we were talking about, right, you get up, you come back, you get up, you come back, you get up. This thing is testing into this bar. Let's take that back off, draw that bar across. You can see the testing here, less volume on the weekly. This to me looks like it's going to take another shot at it and try to get through it. You could buy it in this area on a daily time frame. You could buy it in this area. It's already done a bullish retest regen off of this swing point high. That held, regenerated. On the daily now, it's trying to regenerate again. What you do is you buy it in this area, you shoot for this top and see how it behaves, see how it can get over it or not. If it can't, you just fade back out of it and you sit back and wait again. If it does work, right, then you get another shot up and you sell into the strength once it gets up there. Finally, look at the monthly. Monthly gets over the 2 swing point highs, doing a retrace. Everything still looks normal. So across the board, still looks fine. I would be buying the daily at this price point for a regeneration to the top side. And stop-wise, wouldn't give it a lot of room. If I'm buying it on a daily time frame, I would be looking at this congruent area here, and I'd put an ATR stop up underneath it. If any of that doesn't make sense, come over to the site, shoot me an email. Let me know what your question is, and I'll try to respond. Have yourself a great one. I'll see you next week.